I'm not gonna sugarcoat this one. Juan del Sur might be one of the most hated Survivor seasons of all time. If you asked me to give my thoughts directly after the season was finished, I would have called it my personal least favorite season, sometimes even below Redemption Island and One World. And as a whole, for a long time, there's been a group in the community against this one. Now, at the time of the season's release, Survivor was coming off of two highly successful releases. We had Cagayan in the original Blood vs. Water, and this puts the season we'll be discussing today in a really tough spot. See, Cagayan is fully recognized by the community as a certified masterpiece, and the original Blood vs. Water brought in the big moves era with countless of entertaining moments. So given the string of perceived home runs by the community, it was looking like Survivor could once again do no wrong. Back-to-back seasons had been crushing it, and fans were extremely excited for the thematic twist of Blood vs. Water to return. On release, however, the 29th season of Survivor was polarizing to say the least. While most casual fans despised it, even the hardcore fans were split on the season. The misdirection from the editors during the merge made the season feel incomplete, and there were tons of decisions made that felt unnecessary and even took away from the experience. As time has gone on, however, it seems like the season has been gaining popularity. Juan del Sur has been aging in the background like fine wine, only getting better as time continues to go on. And so today we're going to be looking back at what made it so hated by the community, but also what caused a shift and how we now view it today.
9 pairs of loved ones have been dropped in the jungles of Nicaragua to begin the adventure of a lifetime.
So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Survivor Retrospective. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing to help us reach our goal of 500 subscribers. We're getting really close now, but hey, let's get into it.
39 days, 18 people, 1 Survivor.
If there's one thing that stands out on Juan del Sur, whether you hate it or you love it, let's get it out of the way first and foremost. It's gonna be the fascinating characters of this season. This season of Survivor has some of the most fascinating groups of players gathered together that you'll probably ever see. And notice how I use the word fascinating instead of things like amazing, terrible, good, or even bad, as the players on this season really are fascinating. Yet I am still so conflicted on if I actually like them or not. And at the end of the day, I think that's a really good thing to have a season full of polarizing characters, as it makes you think on a deeper level about who are the better Survivor players. There is also problems with the cast being so polarizing, and it brings to the forefront the issue of Survivor doing a Blood vs. Water season, and those very same issues that were able to be minimized in the very first iteration of Blood vs. Water. But as mentioned earlier in the video, we also have the curse that a lot of Survivor seasons face that follow epic seasons, like fans versus favorites and heroes versus villains. And that's simply the issue that these seasons get our expectations way too high, that the seasons that follow tend to be viewed as disappointments. Therefore, to be able to convey why I believe the season shouldn't be so hated by the community, I first need to dismiss the big criticisms that it faces.
Let me ask you guys a question. Is this going to be a friendly, we're just going to see how this goes between the 5 of you for the rest of this challenge?
Everyone hold on tight, and please do not yell at me in the comments, as I am sure I'm about to piss a bunch of you off. Survivor Vanuatu, Survivor Gabon, Survivor Nicaragua, and Survivor Corong all have one thing in common, and that one thing obviously being that they directly follow Survivor All-Star seasons. And while they do not all directly follow seasons that the community views as being successful, I think everyone can agree that they all have heightened senses of epicness to them. Having a big celebration season of Survivor is something that not every season of the show is able to recreate, and because the community grows more excited for these seasons, usually the seasons that follow them are seen as letdowns and disappointments. And that's a big reason why I'm scared the community is not going to like season 41 of Survivor, as the expectations for that season are completely out of control at this point. But that's a topic for a completely other video. What I'm trying to get at is no matter how the season was able to perform, there is no possible way to recreate the magic in a bottle that was Survivor Cagayan, and so this season did not get a fair shot right out of the gate.
Let's go, Josh. Lead is on our team.
If you saw my video a while back covering Survivor Vanuatu, then you will know I discussed the idea that the 9th season of Survivor aged like fine wine, in the sense that the season itself is a slow burn waiting for the merge, and also how farther away that we get from that season, the more and more people tend to love it. Hear me out for a second as I explain how Juan del Sur is the exact same as this, but also the complete opposite at the same time. As we get more and more distance from when the season first aired, it continues to grow in popularity, much like how Survivor Vanuatu is growing in popularity. So when looking at the big picture, these seasons are both so similar, but when you get closer, it couldn't be any more different, as Survivor Vanuatu has a really bad pre-merge and an amazing post-merge, and the 29th season of Survivor has an entertaining pre-merge followed by a pretty lackluster post-merge after we lose Josh and Jeremy.
Person voted out the second member of our jury, Jeremy. Need to bring me your torch.
The The final issue with this season is something that is next to impossible to avoid when casting a season with a blood versus water theme. Normally, Survivor needs to focus on casting 16 to 20 stellar personalities that will pop as entertaining television, but in this season you need to cast the players as pairs, and instead of finding one stellar individual, we end up getting two decent personalities. An easy example with this is the father and daughter duo of Wentworth and Farm Guy 69. Wentworth is one of the community's favorite Survivor players, but Dale is Farm Guy 69. There are many questionable casting choices that are made this season with people like Baylor and Missy, but I think the only true mistake was with John Rocker, and I think it really helps the season that he gets voted out on day 8.
If you were a man, I would knock your teeth out.
Oh
You look like a man.
You can knock me out, bro! Knock me out!
Remember that season we can't stop talking about with Survivor Cagayan? Well, on a rewatch of this season, the characters are so fun to watch, but I think a big reason it wasn't well received in 2014 is because Cagayan is such a game body season with high levels of strategic gameplay, and San Juan del Sur gets a completely different shift in tone. Although parts of this season does have amazing strategy, we'll touch on it later in the video with Natalie. The issue is that most of the moves that Natalie is making throughout the season are very subtle and not in your face type of moves like Tony, Spencer, or Cass. But I think there's something to be said about a season of Survivor that is able to be fun, and screw it, Survivor San Juan del Sur is so much fun. I remember hating the season when it first came out because I was a kid becoming a super fan of the show and thought strategy was all that mattered. But without fun character moments, Survivor really loses all its magic. Every season of Survivor needs a Fabio, a Wu, and of course a Keith Nale.
I just don't see many Joshes in Louisiana.
This might be the craziest thing I've ever said in one of my Survivor retrospective videos, but we need Drew Christie back on our television screen. I don't care if it's Second Chance 2, a captain season, or even give him an Island of the Idols season, but Drew is a manipulator of this game and deserves way more love. And if for nothing else, he was able to recognize the top tier Survivor player that Kelley Wentworth was going to become before anyone else even realized it.
Basically, I'm a badass and a manipulator of this game.
We also need to take a second to acknowledge the amazing future Survivor All-Stars that will be introduced this season with Jeremy Collins, Kelley Wentworth, Keith Nale, and Natalie Anderson. Jeremy is of course a Survivor fan favorite, and a big reason people write this season off right after the merge is because we lose Jeremy far too early. But there will be much more to talk about with Jeremy, Kelley, and Keith in a couple of days with our Survivor Cambodia video. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it.
Working Dale, farming is the only life he's ever known. But growing up, daughter Kelley couldn't wait to make her own path.
The best part of this season, hands down, is Natalie's slow revenge plot that takes place throughout the entire season. If you have watched my videos for any period of time, then you know I think what makes or breaks a season of Survivor is the characters, and more importantly, the journeys we get to go on with those characters. There is a reason we love underdog stories so much, and it's because they are so compelling. We lose Natalie's loved one on the very first episode, as Nadia is the first boot of the season, and this really forces Natalie to find another 20 on the island to be her ally. Natalie turns to Jeremy, and these two become a great dynamic duo of the season. But on day 24, Jeremy is blindsided, and this means Natalie once again is all alone on the island. The best part about this is she fully calls her shot and explains she will get revenge one day. Her best moves come at the very end of the game as she splits the votes between Alec and Keith to protect Keith, and then somehow manages to play dumb to her alliance and pretend that it was a mistake to vote for Alec instead of Keith. However, the bigger move, and the move that wins her the game, is when she plays her idol for Jaclyn and idols bail her out of the game.
I was gonna play this for myself tonight, but idols are more fun when you play them for somebody else. Jaclyn, did you vote for who I told you to vote for?
The community is way too hard on Survivor San Juan del Sur when it first came out, and I think this season should have been viewed as at least average. But as more and more players from the season come back to play the game again, I think it boosts the overall quality of the season to be able to look back at where they all came from. We have the amazing underdog story of Natalie losing Nadia at the start of the season, and then Natalie herself being the first person voted out of Survivor Winners at War. And knowing the amazing Survivor players that Jeremy and Wentworth return into is an amazing spectacle. So, should you give this season another chance? 100% yes. Try looking past the hero duels, Exile Island, and giving up reward challenges, as there are so many great characters that are introduced to this season. My final rating for Survivor San Juan del Sur Blood vs. Water is an 8.2 out of 10. A tier.